Merry Christmas! So, sorry kid ha, ba't kailan lang ko send ang part 2 sang module 2. Okay? So, I know na busy-busy ka mo subong, but no rush nga ng taon nyo gid ni patapuson. Okay. So, to continue, we have the research designs in psychology. No? So, research design are structured plans for conducting study based on the questions being investigated. So, you'll know more about research designs when you reach into research subjects. No? Ako man ang gahandle siya na dra sa psychology department. So, ang mga key terms naton when it comes to research in psychology, we have the variable, no? Variable, anything that changes or varies between or within individuals. So, I can explain more about it. Variable, we have the dependent variables, okay? So, and so on. So, example, like gender, intelligence, level of anxiety, they are variables. So, makita tama na gyapon when we are making our abstract, or if we are making our title, we can identify those variables, and those variables are actually the ones that we are studying. Okay, so they manipulate there are variables that manipulate the other variables, no? So may isang upuan giniya ang pag-explain naton sini when it comes to variable, but this is the introduction to psychology, so I will just tell you the overview lang, no, sang research in psychology. So for the population, this is the entire group of interest in a study. For example, ano ang mga recipients mo, anong mga studian mo. So that's your population. So if for example, ang ginastudian mo is all college students in a university, like for example, nursing students, psychology students, so that's your population. Okay, sa inyong study. A representative naman is a subset of the population. So, for example, there are 200 college students and selected randomly from the university. So, let's say, to make it simple, there are 60 students and psychology students, but you selected randomly like 30 lang. Okay? So, there are types of research designs. We have the descriptive designs. Okay? So, these descriptive designs, researchers do not manipulate variables. So, they observe and describe phenomena. So, there's a data already, kumbaga. So, okay, for example, observing classroom interactions to describe the prevalence of teacher-student conflicts, no? So, ara na nga daan, pwede niya na ma-observe. So, i-describe na lang. So, it's called descriptive. But there's another that can also be called descriptive, kung ang data is available naman. Buron galing nga akong camera, sorry kid. And then we have the common methods. So we have the case study. This is an in-depth study of one person over a long period. Okay? So for example, studying a patient with a rare psychological disorder, you can make a case study about it. So, naturalistic observation, observing behavior in a real-world setting. Okay? Example, watching how children interact in a playground. Okay? So, qualitative research interview, so this is an open-ended data collection. So, when we say qualitative class, this is usually subjective. Okay? Because the answer based on the perspective of the, let's say, subject or our recipient, no? So, open-ended siya because the answer is not yes or no. So, the answer must be supported with reasons sa atong ginastudihan. So, for example, conducting interviews with adolescents to explore experiences of bullying. So, you interview that person, no? So, how it affects the bullying, sa iya kabuhi, something like that. So, it's qualitative. Okay. Survey research. So, uses numeric skills for responses. At din mostly ginagamit ng survey research. This is actually used in quantitative where there is a numeric scales, no? Sa quanti pwede ma-measure siya. Okay, so for example, the Likert scale, no? Pag once gani na may questions na agree, disagree, mga something like that. So that is a survey research na nga pwede numeric ang scale. Okay, ma-measure siya by numbers. But unlike sa quali, hindi mo siya ma-measure by number. Okay, so there's a thematic, a way about measuring the qualitative interviews. Okay, so for example, do a survey asking students to rate stress levels from one is low, five is high. So that is an example of a quantitative or numeric or survey research. Okay. Sa correlational studies naman, measure the relationship between two or more variables. So correlational. So it is the relationship. Okay, gina-correlate mo. So for example, exploring if higher levels of exercise correlate with reduced anxiety. Is there a relationship? Okay. For the experimental studies, involves manipulation of an independent variables to observe effects of dependent variables. So for example, testing the effect of a new teaching method on student test scores. So you are doing an experiment. But how do we do the experiment? So there's an manipulation. We do the pre-test and post-test. So, but in between the pre-test and post-test, there's a what we call intervention na lantawon ta ko ano ang ining result sang ato na experiment. So that will be an experimental studies. Components, random assignment, we have to ensure equal chance of group placement, experimental group receives treatment, example, new teaching method. So may treatment siya or may intervention siya. So, and the control group does not receive treatment or gets a placebo. So, a traditional teaching method. For example, Abby, no, butan tabi sa placebo, you know, the most common example for this, when the placebo is the drugs, di ba? Given the same drugs, given the same drugs, pero wala kabalo, kundi yung may content, hindi nyo yung wala. So, abi nila, may ara, but the effect, i-check nila, ay, okay, gali ako. Dito mo balana, psychological lang. Kay man nga, ang intake itong content nga, ang drug, na wala man ato sang unod. Kumbaga, wala epekto, gidya. Wala gidya content yung drug mismo. Okay. So, the control group does not receive treatment or gets a placebo. So, traditional teaching method, for example, Abby, no? Longitudinal studies, longitudinal studies. So, this observes the same participants over time. So, medyo malawig siya. So, studying cognitive changes in children over 10 years. So, this could be considered as longitudinal studies. So, 10 years laba. Because ginasadihan mo yung mga subjects mo or recipients mo or there's another word for it. 10 years ang ila development, 10 years ang ilang cognitive changes while they're studying. Okay? So, malawig siyang proseso. Now, we have the twin adoption studies. So, sa research on genetic versus environmental influences using twins raised together or apart. So, this is an example of twin adoption studies. For example, comparing the intelligence of identical twins raised in different households. No, kung may ara gimambala genetic difference. Is there gong pangbabaw gibalang genetic nila or yung environmental influences? Okay, example lang ina. So, then we have the meta-analysis. This combines findings from multiple studies to draw arching conclusions. So, for example, reviewing studies on therapy, effectiveness for depression. Okay? So, measures in psychological research. So, we have the self-report. Yeah, this uses surveys or interviews. Example, asking participants about their sleep habits. No? But we have limitation, of course. Participants may provide socially desirable answer. So, there's a bias, magka-bias siya. So, there's a limitation. So, behavioral measures. So, use observation of actions in controlled or natural environment. So, example, recording how often a child shared toys during play. So, ang limitations ni participants may modify their behavior if they know they are being observed. 'Di ba? Kung balaan nila gina-observe sila, so magiging bias na kay because hindi na yung natural nga behavior pakita nila. Kay they know that they are being watched. So that's the limitation. Sa physiological measures, we use, of course, the bodily responses under certain conditions. So, for example, measuring heart rate during stressful situations. Ang limitations ini, it requires specialized equipment and training. Okay, so medyo mabudlay siya. Now, we have the multiple measures. We use combining several approaches to offset limitations. Okay, so for example, using surveys, observations, and physiological data to study stress. So, ang limitations ini, mahal lang. Okay, kung i-combine mo yung mga several approaches, expensive and time consuming. So, the overview of statistics naman, we have the descriptive statistics, summarize and describe data. So, for example, calculating the average test score of students in a class. Sa inferential statistics, test hypothesis and generalized findings. Ang examples ini, determining if test scores of two teaching methods are significantly different. Now, sa research ethics, the overview. So, the ethics ensure proper conduct and research. So, we, of course, when we conduct research, when we conduct our interviews, we use informed consent. Okay, so the inform participants about the study details, risks, and benefits. So you have to inform them what they are participating. Okay? For example, a participant signs a consent from before a memory study. Okay? So in every class study, there's an informed consent. That's part of the ethics gijaya, yung informed consent. Okay? That's very important. So, respect for persons. So, safeguard dignity and autonomy, especially for vulnerable groups. So, when you are studying or making a research, you do not disclose any information about your participants. For example, another example, ensuring children understand their participation is voluntary, wala pilitay. Now, beneficence. The beneficence, this minimize risk and maximize benefits. So when we say benefits, this is beneficial. Okay. So ensuring on that the study on anxiety management provides useful coping techniques. That's the benefits, for example, kung butang sa isa ka study. So and of course, sa ethics, we have the beneficence, okay? And sa privacy and confidentiality, protect participants' identities and data. For example, storing survey responses without identifying information. So, actually, we don't usually ask their names, no? So, kung hindi nila gusto i-disclose, but we don't really ask for their names, no, sa aton data. Okay? So, justice, distribute benefits and burdens fairly. So, example, ensuring all participants in drug trial have equal access to follow-up treatments. So, kung experimentuhan mo na siya, participants mo was under an experimental design, of course, kay may ara ka na nga gining intervention or treatment na ginhatag, you should have the follow-up kung ano na. O basi naka-apekto to sa iya or something like you have to give them justice, no? So kung ano man ang gin-apply mo. All right? So that is for now. I hope nga may nakuha ka mo. This is just a quick overview of the module 2. All right? So Merry Christmas and class, I know that gina-encourage you ka mo mag-subscribe sa YouTube channel ko. This is not for para maka-kwarta ako or anything like that. So, if that will happen later on, so that's the fruit of my, kung anong ginobra ko. But my intention here is nga mas ma-deliver ko yung akon nga lecture mas madali through my channel. Okay? And then mas makita sang iban nga students ang akon nga mga lectures if it's on public, like sa platform nga ini. Okay, like for example, if you want to know about some sa theories of personality, pwede nyo kalantaw dira in advance, di ba? So I will be on live streaming sa January 6, okay, for both introduction to psychology and theories of personality. Okay, so consider this as our remote. So I I suggest that you watch those nga ginasend ko sa inyo sa aton respective JCs. Okay, so Merry Christmas and have a good day.